Idle games are weird. To some extent, an idle game is about the means of scale and efficiency. You need money to make money. But there's a deeper meaning to them that always leaves me disheartened with a near inexplicable feeling of existential dread. A feeling of having too much, causing a loss of wanting anything at all. Within the idle game lies an addicting gameplay loop, driving you to just get to the next milestone, because once you do, you'll be able to get twice as much in half the time. But this is a road leading up a mountain, ending with you driving straight off a cliff. This is why idle games should be in the horror genre, and this is Mega Big Games. When I was starting out in high school, I didn't have a phone, at least not one with any functionality besides calling my parents. What I did have, however, is an iPod Touch, and the device had all the app functionality of the iPhone, which was exploding in popularity at the time. It seemed like every week I was downloading a new game on it to play during my classes throughout the school day. One of these apps was Adventure Capitalist. I had never tried an idle game before, but being an avid watcher of Shark Tank, developing an interest in the idea of making boatloads of money to the point where I could be seen as a Mr. Wonderful or Mark Cuban type, it made me want to download the app, despite a lack of any association with the show that made me want to get it in the first place. The concept was easy enough. You start out slowly making money with a lemonade stand, then as you reinvest into your business, you can acquire money faster. Then you can expand into other businesses, like a car wash, which earns you more money per cycle but has a slower refresh period. Watching your money go up and up and up gives you a rush of dopamine, and knowing that it keeps going even when you turn your device off just gets you excited to check back in and see how high that number has gotten. Getting to $100,000 is a milestone that feels like it could be life-changing, and to many, it most certainly would be. Getting to $1 million made 15-year-old me imagine how rich I would feel, the cars you could buy, the houses you could afford, and getting into the $100 million to billion dollar range conjured up images of yachts, private jets, and supercars, a level of wealth and luxury that very few will ever get to enjoy. But then something strange happens. Eventually, you get to the point where you've made $300 billion, equivalent to making you the richest person in the world. And yet, the numbers still go up higher. These are massive numbers, but you are only beginning to scratch the surface. So you keep going, investing and reinvesting the money back into the businesses. With some of the progress bars going so fast, they don't even bother displaying it to you anymore, instead just giving you a simple animation to show that money is indeed still accruing. Before long, you've surpassed the market capitalization of the largest company in the world, and soon after, you've passed the GDPs of whole countries, and before long, the world. When I initially played this game, I kept going, even after reaching this point. But why? The money no longer had any relation to reality. The idea of this amount of money even conceptually being a thing no longer conjured up a life of luxury yachts and space-based companies, but rather when the German government lost World War I and were stuck with more debts than they could pay, leading to them overprinting their currency and having over 300% inflation rates monthly. Bricks of useless money could be found everywhere, an amount that at one point meant you were well off suddenly wasn't enough to afford a loaf of bread. Once you reach that amount of money on the screen, the images that your mind conjures up stop being so positive. At a certain point, too much money can be a worrying thing for everyone, as currency itself, in part, extracts its value from its scarcity. But that's not the scary part of clicker games. As you increase your wealth ever higher, you further disassociate meaning from why you began to play in the first place. Part of the draw for such a game is to imagine what it would be like to have such a large amount of money at your disposal. To see the number climb higher and higher as if you were a successful executive running a popular startup. At least, that's how it was for me in 9th grade. But eventually, when your wealth exceeds far beyond the realm of possibility, it becomes hard, then impossible, to conceptualize the amount of wealth at your disposal. If you were offered $100 and all you had to do in return was stop what you were doing and just stand in place for 1 minute, it would be hard to find anyone willing to turn that down. Hard, but not impossible. As of the writing of this video, Elon Musk stands at number 1 in the list of the world's richest people, having an estimated net worth of $237 billion. If you take the 1-year interest rate of a treasury bond and assume Elon decides to cash out everything and put all of his money into the government security, you can easily see how much he could safely make every minute. If you take the amount of interest he would make from his investment in a year and divide by the number of minutes in a year, you get around $23,500 per minute. His time would be worth so much more than $100, it simply wouldn't make sense for him to waste a minute of his life doing nothing. But at the same time, it's fair to say that at that level of pay, he also would never have to do another thing in his life again. Neither would his kids or his kids' kids, and so on and so forth for untold generations. There comes a point where no person in their lives could spend, much less comprehend, the amount of money that he has. But despite that, Adventure Capitalist is just getting started at these numbers. You can make the amount to become the world's richest person look like peanuts in the idle game. But there comes a point where getting so much money makes it lose all meaning. You can't even fantasize about living the high life with that amount of money because you can't even conceptualize what that amount of money looks like. You can't imagine what it's like to spend that much money because there aren't enough things on the planet to buy, to the point where you could feasibly make a dent in the overall amount. Assuming that the value of money itself hasn't completely crashed by that point. Because, instead of these games giving you a feeling of what it's like to see that number go up in the same way you might wish it go up in your bank account, instead, it disassociates the currency from value altogether. While as a society, we derive the value of money from its scarcity, the idle clicker gives way to inflation of our own mind's creation. What's the point of continuing to check back in on the app once you already own the entire planet? What's the point of getting more money when money itself has lost all meaning? Have you ever considered that the reason why you're paying a sextillion dollars for a lemonade stand is because you flooded the economy with so much money that it's not worth anything anymore? That it now has so little value that you need to scrape together that much just for a lemonade stand? And I know I may be looking too much into this, but to further emphasize this point, I want to show an example of other players within this game's community and how their perception can be warped. There's a post within the Adventure Capitalist subreddit that describes a player that took a 5-month break from the app. Coming back to the game to see the amount he had was in the high tetragontillions, all generated while he had spent his time elsewhere. That's this many zeros, and it's a number I would once again like to put in perspective for you. There are an estimated 200 septillion stars in the known universe. Let's assume that around each and every one of those stars are 10 planets just like Earth. Well, on Earth, there's an estimated 7 undecillion 500 decillion grains of sand. If all these planets were identical to our own and we had nothing better to do than total up every grain of sand across every solar system, do you know how many grains of sand there would be? 15 quattuor vigintillion, which is still 58 septillion times less than the 870 tetragontillion that this guy came back to. 870 tetragontillion is such a large number that it even exceeds the amount of atoms estimated to be in the universe. And you know what the top reply to this post was? This is what this game does to your perception of value. That comment is not wrong. That money is nothing. It equates to nothing. It's an amount of money so high that it has lost any meaning at all, no longer comparable to anything in existence. To me, idle games become an existential fear of drowning in your own desires, getting everything you've ever wanted and more, to the degree that you no longer feel like you have anything at all. And yet, the numbers continue climbing ever higher, growing ever closer to infinity, yet never able to reach it. Here's another picture I found on Reddit of someone who made it even further. It's not worth going into any comparisons to put it into perspective because it's not comparable to anything. I never made it to this point. I fell off that cliff far sooner. There's such a thing as having too much without an end, and when that happens, there is no meaning. Without meaning, there's no purpose. When there's no purpose, there is no will to continue. The loss of which is one of the most crippling forms of existential horror. Hey, end of the video. Thank you for watching. I hope this video wasn't too much of a downer. I promise others will be more upbeat. But regardless, I appreciate you supporting the channel by watching to the end, and if you made it this far and you like what you saw, please consider giving the video a like so that more people might see it too. As a quick aside, if you are an avid player of idle games or clicker games, no disrespect to you, clearly there's a market for them. But I would like to know in the comments, why? What do you like about them? What motivates you to keep going? Let's talk about it below. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.